She liked it when they spoke to her. Cranium and spine, the girdles of pelvis and shoulder, fibula, tibia, femur, the ribs and sternum, and phalanges that reached for her brain endlessly, the tips looking so much like claws, wrapping, shielding. The innards of the bones sang songs. Marrow and compact, yellow, red, white when bleached, with the look of a beautiful sea sponge when cracked open to expose those voices. The voices of the bones depended on the creature, the person, the sex, the gender, the history. Sometimes, when the bones spoke, they'd whisper requests. It used to be things about where they were displayed, how, which way they wanted wired. Eventually, they wanted more. Freedom from flesh and sinew. Blood vessels and fat and movement.
Freedom!
The whispers would turn into screams. The bones would pout if she did not immediately obey. Those phalanges would haunt her dreams, their shield squeezing until her lungs felt like they'd pop, ribs cracking. She learned to obey. Washing each bone delicately when the task was done, using dermestid beetles, bleach, peroxide, powders, she learned to be gentle and careful, humming along if the bones wanted, or being silent if they didn't. She even learned how to hunt for the bones, collection of beautiful friends growing as they called out for her. The collection, always the collection, reminding her. Bone-in chicken, bone-in ham. Oh dear, if the ribs were boneless, that simply wouldn't do.
Please,
the meat cried, pleading, begging, wiggling disgustingly where it lay, bound. Its bones laughed like she did, and she looked down at it. She clucked her tongue, rolled her eyes, long sundress flowing as she twirled around, collecting what she needed. The beetles looked starved.
Why are you doing this?
The meat sometimes asked that. It was just so common, but sometimes it just cried. Silent or loud, sobbing, angry, sad. Usually, the answering bones were laughter.
Freedom!
The bones of this meat were so excited to be free. They laughed louder, singing, maxilla and clavicle leading the tune. She smiled wryly as she heard it shift. A low hum that centered in her chest, under her breasts, down her spine, and all the way to her coccyx. Sometimes she'd take pleasure before freeing the bones. This one wasn't good enough for that. With a soft sigh, tearing her own self from the daydream, she reached down and grabbed one of the ropes, dragging the meat and the poor trapped bones closer to the knives. The meat started screaming. In answer, the maxilla sang louder, some bones humming, some bones whispering, some with the laughter turned cackles. She laughed again, too, reaching for a good knife. A sharp knife. The bones never minded when she nicked them, reminding her that battle scars were unavoidable in this day and age. The meat eventually stopped screaming by the time she walked over to it. It lay there, staring, salty tears making tracks on the dirty, gross, fleshy face. Oh, the poor, poor skull, hiding its smile. She laughed again. The mandible told funny jokes.
Freedom.
She obeyed the voices of the bones.